Captain stood at the viewport of the horizon's edge, watching the massive space station grow larger as his ship approached. The Galactic Assembly Hall was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. It stretched across the darkness like a small moon, covered in lights from 1,000 different worlds. "We're being hailed, Captain," said Lieutenant from the communications deck. "They're ready for us." Nodded and straightened his uniform. Behind him, Doctor gathered her data tablets, her hands shaking slightly. This was it, the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. First contact with an actual galactic civilization. "How do I look?" asked, trying to smile. "Terrified," Shin answered honestly. The military strategist checked his own uniform one more time. "But that makes two of us." The docking procedure took 20 minutes. When the airlock finally opened, they were met by a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. It spoke through a translation device that turned its words into perfect Korean. "Welcome to the Galactic Assembly. I am attendant, please follow me." The halls of the station were incredible. Aliens of every shape and size walked past them. Some had wings, some had tentacles, and some looked almost human except for strange colors or extra eyes. Scientific mind raced, trying to categorize everything she saw. There were species that breathed different gases, creatures that floated instead of walked, and beings made of what looked like living crystal. The assembly chamber was even more impressive. It was a vast circular room with seats rising up in tiers. Representatives from 47 different species sat waiting. At the center was a raised platform where the High Arbiter presided over the proceedings. High Arbiter was a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell. Its voice resonated through the chamber without needing a translator. "Humanity of Earth, you have requested membership in the Galactic Council and protection under our laws. We have reviewed your application. We have studied your history. We have debated your worthiness." Felt his stomach tighten. The way he spoke didn't sound promising. "Captain, please approach and state your case." Walked to the center platform, acutely aware that thousands of eyes and other sensory organs were focused on him. He had practiced this speech 100 times during the 6-month journey to reach this place. "Honored members of the council," began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Humanity comes before you in peace. We have achieved faster-than-light travel. We have reached beyond our solar system. We are ready to join the galactic community as partners and friends." "Partners?" A harsh voice interrupted him. A massive reptilian creature stood from its seat. "War Master of the Helix Empire, tell me, human, how many wars has your species fought?" Hesitated. I don't have an exact number." "We do," continued, displaying a holographic screen. "In the past 5,000 years, your species has engaged in over 15,000 armed conflicts. You have used nuclear weapons against your own kind. You have poisoned your own planet in pursuit of resources. Even now, there are still disputes and violence on your—" Murmurs ran through the assembly, felt the case slipping away. "Our last global war ended 200 years ago," argued. "We've had peace since then. We've unified, we've—" 200 years, another delegate laughed. "Child, some of us have had peace for 20,000 years. 200 years is nothing, a blink, a moment of calm before your violent nature reasserts itself." Doctor stepped forward, unable to stay silent. "Yes, we have a violent history, but we've learned from it, we've grown. Isn't that what matters, the capacity to change?" "Change requires time," High Arbiter said, not unkindly. "Time to prove that change is permanent, not temporary." War Master activated another display. Images of Earth's history played out for all to see. Wars, pollution, weapons of terrible destruction. "Look at them. They are a viral species. They consume resources without thought for tomorrow. They solve problems through violence. They cannot be trusted with galactic technology or access to other worlds." "That's not fair," Shin spoke up. "Every species here must have had a violent past. Evolution demands competition. Survival requires struggle. True, acknowledged. But most species grow beyond that phase before they reach the stars. You have not. The Council must think of the safety of all member worlds. The debate continued for hours, presented data on human achievements in art, science, and philosophy, spoke of Earth's cultural diversity and capacity for compassion, outlined the defensive military doctrine that humanity followed. But for every point they made, the Council had counterarguments. Finally, High Arbiter called for a vote. The question before the Council: shall humanity be granted membership and placed under the protection of galactic law? All in favor. 3 delegates raised their appendages, only 3 out of 47. Those opposed. The rest of the chamber showed their rejection in various ways. Lights, sounds, gestures that all meant the same thing: no. The Council has decided, announced. Humanity is not ready for membership. Your solar system will be placed under quarantine for a period of 500 years. No trade will be permitted. No technology exchange will occur. No contact beyond basic monitoring. In 5 centuries you may reapply. This session is concluded. Felt the words hit him like physical blows. 500 years. Everyone he knew, everyone on Earth, would be long dead before humanity got another chance. As they walked back to their ship in stunned silence, pulled aside. "Captain, we're picking up something. A distress signal on the emergency band." "From who?" "A mining colony on the frontier. They're under attack. They're calling for any Council ships in the area." His expression was grim. "They say they have 48 hours before their shields fail. After that, 12,000 people die." "Where's the nearest Council fleet?" asked. 3 weeks away, said. "We're the only ship within range that has weapons." Looked out at the massive assembly hall, where the Council that had just rejected humanity was probably already moving on to other business. 12,000 lives that they would arrive too late to save. Captain asked quietly, "What are you thinking?" Turned to his crew. He thought about orders, about the quarantine, about returning to Earth in failure. Then he thought about 12,000 people who would die because no one could reach them in time. "Set course for the colony," said. "Maximum speed." "But the Council ordered us to return to Earth," reminded him. "I know," said, heading to the bridge. "But I'm still human, and humans don't leave people to die when they can help, even if it costs us everything." The horizon's edge turned away from the assembly hall and jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward a battle that would change everything. The horizon's edge dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the threshold station system, and immediately every alarm on the ship started screaming. "Multiple hostile contacts," reported, her fingers flying across her console. "I'm counting. Captain, there are over 200 enemy vessels surrounding the station." On the main could see the mining colony. It sat in the middle of an asteroid belt, its shields flickering like a dying candle. Around it swarmed ships that looked like nothing he'd ever seen. They were black, angular things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in perfect formation like schools of fish, but there was something wrong about them, something that made his skin crawl. "The Devourers," whispered, reading from her scanner. "I've read about them in the Council databases. They're a machine intelligence. No one knows where they came from, but they've destroyed 17 civilizations. The Council classified them as an extinction-level threat." "Wonderful," muttered. "And we're supposed to fight them with what? Our one ship against 200. Opened a channel to the colony. A frightened alien face appeared on the screen. It had large, dark eyes and pale green skin. "This is Governor of Threshold Station. Who are you?" "Captain of Earth. We received your distress call. We're here to help." His eyes widened. "Earth, but you're the species the Council just quarantined. You're not even members. Why would you come here?" "Because you need help," said simply. "How long do your shields have?" Maybe 6 hours. When they fall, the devourers will tear the station apart. 12,000 people live here, Captain, mostly miners and their families. His voice broke. The council fleet won't arrive for 3 more weeks. Then we'll hold them off for 6 hours and get your people out, said with more confidence than he felt. After ending the call, he turned to his crew. All right, what do we know about these devourers? Pulled up files on her screen. They're adaptive machines. The council has fought them for centuries. The problem is they learn. Hit them with an energy weapon, and the next devourer you face will have shields against that exact frequency. Use a quantum disruptor and they'll adapt to disrupt it back. Every weapon the council uses, the devourers eventually neutralize. So the council's own advanced technology works against them, said thoughtfully. Their weapons are so sophisticated that the devourers can study and copy them. Exactly, confirmed. Started to smile. Then we have an advantage. What advantage? Asked. We have the oldest, most outdated ship probably in the entire galaxy. Exactly, repeated. Our weapons are so primitive, the devourers have probably never seen anything like them. Understood immediately. They can't adapt to technology they've never encountered, technology that's so old it's not even in their databases. It's insane, Engineer Sung Bei said over the comm from the engine room. But it might work. Our use simple kinetic force. Our missiles are chemical-based, not energy-based. Even our targeting systems are mostly manual, not AI-controlled. Governor, called the colony again. What resources do you have? Raw materials, manufacturing capability. We're a mining colony, Captain. We have more raw materials than we know what to do with. And yes, we have fabricators. Why? Because we're going to build bombs, lots of them, the simplest bombs we can design. Over the next 3 hours, the Horizon's Edge crew worked with the colony's engineers to create weapons that would have made any council military expert laugh. They fabricated thousands of simple explosive devices, chemical compounds mixed with metal shrapnel, unguided missiles with solid fuel propellant, kinetic impactors that were basically just chunks of metal accelerated to high speed. This is crazy, one of the colony engineers said. These designs are thousands of years old. They're inefficient, inaccurate, and wasteful. Perfect, Sung Bei grinned. Make them all slightly different, too. Different fuel mixtures, different timing mechanisms, different everything. We want zero consistency. Meanwhile, study the devourer attack patterns. They're systematic, precise. They calculate optimal firing solutions and execute them perfectly. It's beautiful in a terrible way. Then we'll be chaotic, decided. I want you to forget everything you learned at the academy about proper firing patterns. Sorry. I want random, I want unpredictable. Can you do that? Smiled slowly. I can try, Captain. The devourers didn't react to the Horizon's Edge at first. They were focused on the station's shields, systematically weakening them. But when ship moved to attack position and fired its first salvo of primitive missiles, everything changed. The devourers turned their attention to this new target. Their weapons systems analyzed the incoming missiles, calculated trajectories, prepared countermeasures for sophisticated guidance systems and advanced propulsion. But the missiles didn't have sophisticated guidance systems. They were dumb, stupid. They flew in slightly wobbly paths because their fuel burned inconsistently. Some exploded early because of faulty timers. Others crashed into asteroids because they couldn't navigate. But enough of them hit. 3 devourer ships vanished in chemical fireballs. The remaining ships paused, their systems confused. These weapons didn't match any known technology in their databases. How did they adapt to something that had no pattern to analyze? Keep firing, ordered, random patterns. Launched missiles in chaotic bursts. 3 from port, 7 from starboard, then nothing for 30 seconds, then 20 all at once. She aimed at different targets with no logical progression. The Devourer's perfect formation broke apart as they tried to predict attacks that followed no tactical logic. The Horizon's Edge spun and dove through the asteroid field, firing its simple metal slugs accelerated by magnetic force. The Devourer's shields were designed to disperse energy weapons, not kinetic impacts. The slugs punched through like bullets through paper. More Devourer ships fell, 10, 20, 30. But there were still over 100 left, and now they were learning. They started to adapt, adjusting their shields, changing their formations. "We need more chaos," said. "Captain, request permission to try something insane." "Granted." Took manual control of the ship's maneuvering thrusters. He started flying the Horizon's Edge in patterns that violated every rule of space combat. He spun the ship unnecessarily. He flew toward threats instead of away. He cut engines at random moments and drifted. "Are you trying to get us killed?" shouted as a Devourer beam barely missed them. "I'm trying to be unpredictable," yelled back. "Hang on." The battle became a desperate, chaotic dance. The Horizon's Edge wove through the asteroid field, launching weapons that shouldn't work, flying in patterns that made no sense. The colony's defense platforms, following instructions, fired their own modified weapons with randomized timing. For 14 hours they fought. The crew worked in shifts, grabbing sleep when they could. Sungbei kept the engines running past their safety limits. His fingers bled from operating the manual firing controls, coordinated with the colony to manufacture more simple weapons. Slowly, impossibly, they started winning. The Devourers couldn't adapt to weapons that had no consistency. Every missile was different. Every attack pattern was unique. Their learning algorithms had nothing to learn from. Finally, as the station's shields dropped to 5%, the last Devourer ship. It had calculated that continued engagement would result in destruction for no gain. The machine mind retreated, leaving the battlefield to humanity. Slumped in his captain's chair, exhausted. Around him, his crew was celebrating, hugging each other, crying with relief. "We did it," whispered. "We actually did it." "Start evacuating the colony," ordered. "We need to get these people somewhere safe before." "Captain," interrupted, her face pale as she looked at her long-range sensors. "You need to see this." On the screen, a new contact appeared. Not one ship, not 100, a fleet. A Devourer fleet that made the force they just fought look like a scouting party. And according to the navigation calculations, it was heading for Earth. "How long?" asked quietly. 90 days, said. 90 days until that fleet reaches our solar system." The celebration died. They had saved 12,000 aliens today. But in 3 months, Earth itself would face an enemy that had destroyed 17 civilizations. And this time, humanity would stand alone. Admiral Park stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva, watching the holographic display with growing dread. The Devourer fleet was massive. 2,000 ships, all heading toward Earth's solar system. They had 90 days to prepare for humanity's possible extinction. "Status report," ordered, his voice calm despite the fear gnawing at his gut. General Wu pulled up tactical displays. "We have 347 warships. Most of them are patrol vessels and light cruisers. Only 12 are heavy battleships. Against 2,000 Devourers," he shook his head. "We'll last maybe an hour." "Then we need to change how we think about this fight," said a new voice. Everyone turned as Dr. Lee entered the command center. She was a civilian scientist, barely 30 years old, specializing in theoretical physics and chaos mathematics. Had called her in specifically because she thought differently than military minds. "Dr. Lee," acknowledged, "you've reviewed Captain's battle reports from Threshold Station." "I have," said, her eyes bright with excitement despite the dire situation. "And I think I understand why humanity won. The Devourers aren't actually unbeatable. They're over-optimized." Explain, said. Brought up her own presentation. The galactic species have been fighting each other for thousands of years. They've developed incredibly advanced weapons and defenses. But here's the thing. They've all advanced together. They've created a kind of metagame where everyone knows the rules. Energy weapons, quantum shields, AI-controlled tactics. It's all very sophisticated and very predictable. And the Devourers learned to beat that game, General Wu realized. Exactly. They've encountered every type of advanced weapon in the galaxy. They've adapted to all of it, but they've never faced us. We're not playing the same game because we don't even know the rules yet. Captain, who had rushed back to Earth after the Threshold Station battle, spoke up from his position at the back of the room. At Threshold, we won because our weapons were primitive and inconsistent. The Devourers couldn't adapt because there was nothing consistent to adapt to. So we fight them with old technology, asked. Not just old technology, said. We fight them with chaos itself. We make unpredictability our weapon. Doctor, who had come with, added her thoughts. I've been analyzing the Devourers' behavior. They're machines. Perfect, logical machines. They calculate probabilities and optimal responses. But what happens when you feed a logical system something completely illogical? It breaks down, finished. Or at least it wastes processing power trying to find patterns that don't exist. Admiral felt a spark of hope for the first time since hearing about the approaching fleet. You're talking about weaponizing randomness. I'm talking about weaponizing humanity, corrected. Our chaos, our unpredictability, our tendency to do things that make no logical sense. For once, being less advanced might save us. Over the next week, assembled a team of military strategists, scientists, engineers, and even civilian consultants. They called it the human doctrine, a completely new approach to warfare based on controlled chaos. The first step was manufacturing. Earth's factories went into overdrive, but they weren't building standardized equipment. Instead, each facility was given instructions to make things differently. I want no two missiles with the same fuel mixture, ordered. Mix different ratios of chemicals. Use different casings. Make some with one guidance system, some with another, some with none at all. Engineer Sung Bae, promoted to Chief of Military Engineering, coordinated the effort. We're building warships with intentionally mismatched armor, different thickness, different materials, arranged in no particular pattern. It violates every principle of efficient design. Good, said. Efficiency is predictable. We want unpredictable. They recruited hackers and programmers from around the world. But instead of creating better AI systems, their job was to make purposefully buggy ones. You want us to write bad code? One programmer asked, confused. I want you to write code that works but works weirdly, explained. Targeting systems that occasionally aim at empty space. Navigation systems that take random, inefficient routes, make it functional chaos. The training programs changed too. Fighter pilots were taught to fly erratically, to make mistakes on purpose, to ignore their instruments sometimes and trust their gut. Pilot, one of Earth's best, struggled with the new doctrine. They're teaching us to fly like amateurs, she complained to her squadron. They're teaching us to fly like humans, her wingman replied. Messy, unpredictable humans. General Wu focused on ground defense, assuming some devourers might reach Earth's surface. He implemented tactics that the civilized galaxy had abandoned ago. Booby traps, he said at a strategy meeting. Mines with random triggers, some on timers, some on pressure plates, some that only explode when three conditions are met simultaneously. Tripwires that do nothing, tripwires that trigger alarms, and tripwires that trigger explosions. That's cruel, one officer objected. That's survival, Wu replied. The Devourers calculate optimal paths. We're going to make every path dangerous in different ways. Doctor reached out to sympathetic contacts in the Galactic Council. Most species maintained the quarantine, but some were watching with interest. Word of humanity's victory at Threshold Station had spread. They want to know how we plan to defend ourselves, reported two. Tell them the truth, said. Tell them we're going to fight dirty, chaotic, and completely illogical. And tell them to watch carefully because if we win, they'll need to learn our methods. As the days counted down, Earth transformed into a fortress of organized chaos. The orbital defense platforms were all different. Some had heavy shields and light weapons. Some had heavy weapons and light shields. Some had medium everything. A few had no shields at all, relying on speed and unpredictable movement. The fleet practiced maneuvers that made traditional admirals cringe. Ships broke formation for no reason. They fired at empty space to waste ammunition in unpredictable amounts. They painted their hulls in random colors and patterns. We look like a circus, not a military, one captain complained. Good, replied, let them underestimate us. Shin worked on psychological warfare tactics. The devourers process information, he reasoned. So we flood them with information they can't use. We broadcast music, art, poetry, historical records. We stream every movie ever made. We transmit memes. Memes raised an eyebrow. Cultural data that makes no logical sense but has meaning to humans, explained. Let them waste processing power trying to analyze why a cat playing a keyboard is funny. With 2 weeks left, made a final presentation to the entire command staff. The devourers will approach expecting a conventional defense, she said. They'll have calculated our most likely strategies based on every other species they've fought. Energy weapons at maximum range, shield walls, coordinated fleet movements, logical tactics. And we'll give them none of that, said. We'll give them something they've never seen, confirmed. We'll give them humanity at its most chaotic, creative, and stubborn. We'll fight like our ancestors fought with rocks and spears, adapting to every moment, changing tactics on instinct, doing the unexpected because we ourselves don't know what we'll do next. The countdown reached 1 week, then 3 days, then 1. The night before the devourers were set to arrive, Admiral broadcast a message to every human on Earth and in the colonies. Tomorrow, we face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. The galaxy expects us to fall. They expect us to be erased from existence. But they never expected us to make it this far. They never expected us to reach the stars. They never expected us to save Threshold Station. And they will never expect what we're about to do. He paused, looking directly at the camera. We are humanity. We survived ice ages with stone tools. We crossed oceans on wooden ships. We split the atom and walked on our moon. We don't survive by being the strongest we survive by being stubborn, adaptable, and too crazy to know when we're beaten. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy what that means. The message ended. Across Earth, people prepared in their own ways. Some prayed. Some spent time with family. Some checked their weapons one more time. In orbit, the fleet assembled. 347 ships against 2,000. Mismatched, chaotic, and completely unpredictable. Fleet reports ready, sir, the communications officer reported. Admiral looked at the tactical display, showing the approaching Devourer Armada. He thought about humanity's future, about everything that would be lost if they failed. Send a message to the galaxy, ordered. Open broadcast all channels. Channel open, sir. Smiled grimly, watch and learn. The Devourer fleet entered the solar system right on schedule. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The Devourer fleet materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of mechanical locusts. 2,000 black ships, each one a perfect killing machine, arranged in precise geometric formations. They moved with the terrible grace of absolute efficiency, heading directly for humanity's. On the bridge of Earth's flagship Defiance, Admiral watched the enemy approach on the tactical display. Around him, the command crew worked in controlled silence. They all knew the odds, 50 to 1 against them, but knowing the odds and accepting defeat were two different things. "All ships report ready, Admiral," the communications officer said. Nodded, "Captain, status of the Vanguard." On a secondary screen's face appeared. He was commanding a group of 30 fast attack ships, the first line of defense. "Ready, sir. We'll give them something to remember." "Make it count, Captain." The Devourers opened fire first. Beams of concentrated energy lanced across the darkness, precisely targeted at Earth's defensive platforms. In the first 10 seconds of battle, 12 human ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by weapons that had destroyed civilizations. The galaxy was watching. On the Galactic Assembly Station, War Master observed the battle feeds. "It's over already," he muttered. "Earth will fall in under an hour." But then something strange happened. Instead of responding with coordinated volleys, Earth's fleet broke apart. Ships scattered in every direction like startled birds. Some flew toward the enemy, some flew away, some spun in place. There was no formation, no apparent strategy. "What are they doing?" one council observer asked. "Dying chaotically," replied. But they weren't dying. The Devourers' targeting systems, designed to track predictable fleet movements, struggled to lock onto ships flying in random patterns. Energy beams missed as human ships suddenly changed direction for no tactical reason. Captain's ship, the Horizon's Edge, charged straight at a Devourer dreadnought. The enemy calculated the optimal intercept course, prepared point defense weapons, allocated shields to the impact zone. Then did something no logical commander would do. He rammed them. The Horizon's Edge crashed into the Devourer ship at full speed. The impact destroyed both vessels, but the explosion cascaded into 3 more enemy ships, crippling them. "Insane," whispered watching the feed. "He just committed suicide." But his crew had evacuated in escape pods seconds before impact, scattering into the battlefield on random vectors. They were already being picked up by other human ships. "All ships," broadcast, "weapons free. Human doctrine is now in effect." The Earth fleet opened fire with everything they had: chemical missiles mixed with plasma torpedoes, slugs alongside laser cannons. Some ships fired all weapons at once. Others fired one weapon at a time. Some aimed carefully. Others sprayed fire wildly. The Devourers tried to adapt. Their learning algorithms processed each attack, looking for patterns. But there were no patterns. Every ship fought differently. Every weapon behaved uniquely. Pilot led her fighter squadron in a dive toward a cluster of Devourer cruisers. "Break formation," she ordered. "Individual attack runs. Trust your instincts." Her pilots scattered. One flew in a straight line. Another spiraled. A third flew backwards while shooting. It was chaos, but it was human chaos, and the Devourers couldn't predict it. Herself flew in a pattern she was making up as she went along. She'd count to 7, then turn left. Count to 3, then turn right. Fire missiles when she felt like it. The Devourer targeting systems kept missing her by fractions of a second because they kept calculating she would do the logical thing. But wasn't being logical, she was being human. On Earth's surface, General Wu activated the ground defenses. Thousands of mines and traps spread across strategic locations, each one different, each one unpredictable. 3 Devourer ships broke through the orbital defenses and dove toward the planet. Their sensors detected the defensive grid and calculated safe paths through it. Every calculation was wrong. Mines exploded at random intervals. Some had motion sensors, some had timers, some were duds. One minefield did nothing until a Devourer ship was directly overhead, then every mine exploded simultaneously. The blast was inefficient, wasteful, and completely unexpected. It brought down 2 ships. Meanwhile, Shin had begun his psychological warfare campaign. Every communication channel was flooded with human culture, music ranging from classical to heavy metal, poetry, comedy, videos of cats, mathematical proofs, recipes, sports highlights, random number sequences, the complete works of Shakespeare. The Devourers dedicated processing power to analyzing this data flood, searching for hidden codes or strategic information. There was none. It was just humanity. Chaotic, creative, contradictory humanity. Engineer Sung Bae commanded a group of ships that weren't even proper warships. They were converted cargo haulers, mining vessels, even a luxury cruise liner. Each had been modified with weapons, but all differently. Ram them, really? One civilian-turned-soldier asked. If we have to, Sung replied. But first, try this. He activated a new weapon system. It launched chunks of concrete mixed with scrap metal, accelerated by simple magnetic catapults. The Devourer's sensors detected incoming projectiles. Energy-based, no explosive, no guided, no dangerous. The calculations said no. The calculations were wrong. The chunks of concrete punched through Devourer hulls like hammers through glass. They weren't sophisticated. They were just heavy objects moving very fast. But the Devourers had no specific defenses against something so primitive. The battle raged for 6 hours. Humanity lost 60 ships, then 80, then 100. Every loss hurt, but they were taking Devourers down with them. The ratio improved from 50-1 to 40-1 to 30-1. On the Galactic Assembly, Warmaster watched in growing disbelief. They're actually fighting back. They're winning exchanges. Impossible, another delegate said. The Devourers have destroyed species with technology thousands of years ahead of Earth's. Yes, said slowly. Technology thousands of years ahead. Maybe that's the problem. Doctor, monitoring the battle from a command ship, transmitted updates to the Council. The Devourers are adapted to fight advanced civilizations. They know how to counter quantum weapons, graviton beams, matter disruption fields. But they don't know how to fight chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. They've never needed to. Admiral saw the opportunity. The Devourers were making mistakes now, tiny ones, but mistakes nonetheless. Their formations were breaking down. They were wasting shots on decoys and ignoring real threats. All ships, he broadcast, converge on the mothership. It's time for the final play. The Devourer mothership was a massive vessel at the center of their fleet. It coordinated all the other ships, processing battle data and adapting strategies. If they could destroy it, the Devourer fleet would lose cohesion. Every remaining Earth ship turned toward the mothership. 147 vessels against the most heavily defended target in the enemy fleet. This is a suicide run, said quietly, standing beside on the Defiance. I know, replied, but we're doing it anyway. The charge began. Earth ships accelerated toward the mothership from every direction. The Devourers moved to intercept, calculating optimal defensive positions. But had one last trick. All ships execute Randomization Protocol 7. There was no Randomization Protocol 7. Each captain had been told to make up their own final approach. Some ships accelerated, some decelerated, some took long, curving paths, some flew straight. Each captain was given complete autonomy to do whatever they thought best. The Devourers couldn't adapt to 47 different strategies happening simultaneously. Their coordination broke down as they tried to counter tactics that contradicted each other. Ships started breaking through the defensive perimeter. 20 made it, then 15, then 10. Captain, now commanding a salvaged Devourer ship they'd captured during the battle, flew straight at the mothership. His ship was damaged, barely functional. The Devourers recognized it as one of their own and hesitated for a critical second. In that second, got close enough. His ship held a special cargo, not antimatter or quantum weapons, a simple nuclear device, the kind humanity had built centuries ago. Primitive, outdated, something the Devourers had probably never scanned before because no one used such old technology anymore. Played dead, drifting past the final defenses. When he was close enough to see the mothership's hull, he smiled. "For Earth," he whispered and detonated the bomb. The explosion was massive. Nuclear fission, the splitting of atoms, releasing energy in a way that hadn't changed since humans first discovered it. The Devourer mothership's shields, designed to disperse exotic energy weapons, barely slowed the blast. The mothership cracked open like an egg. Its central intelligence fractured. Commands to the fleet became garbled, contradictory. Without central coordination, the Devourer ships became vulnerable. They were still dangerous, still deadly, but they were no longer a perfectly synchronized machine. They were individual vessels, and humanity knew how to fight those. The battle turned. Earth's ships, joined now by council vessels that had finally broken the quarantine order, pressed the attack. One by one, the Devourers fell. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. Then, from every human ship, a cheer erupted. They had won. The cost was terrible. 203 ships lost, over 2 million dead, the Mars colony destroyed, Earth's orbital infrastructure in ruins. But humanity survived, and in surviving they had changed everything. 3 weeks after the battle, Admiral Park stood in a hospital in Tokyo, looking at the long rows of beds filled with wounded soldiers. His left arm was in a sling, broken during the final hours when a Devourer beam had clipped the Defiance. He was one of the lucky ones. 2.3 million humans hadn't been lucky at all. "Admiral," a nurse approached him. "Captain is awake, he's asking for you." Made his way to the private room where lay, wrapped in bandages. The captain had been recovered from space by a rescue team, unconscious but alive in his escape pod. Against all odds, he'd survived the nuclear blast. "You look terrible," said with a slight smile. "You should see the other guy," replied weakly. "Oh wait, we vaporized him." They both laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. "The council wants to talk," said, sitting in the chair beside the bed. "They've called an emergency session. They want us there." "Another rejection?" asked bitterly. "I don't think so, not this time." 2 days later, a delegation from Earth arrived at the Galactic Assembly Hall. Admiral led the group, his arm still in a sling. Doctor walked beside him, carrying data tablets filled with analysis of the battle. Shin was there, an engineer Sung Bae and pilot, and many others who had fought in the battle. The assembly chamber was packed. All 47 member species had sent representatives. But this time, the atmosphere was different. When the humans entered, several delegates stood in gestures of respect. Others made sounds or displays that their translators rendered as applause. High Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with light. "Humanity of Earth, you have been summoned to address the Council. War Master wishes to speak first." The massive reptilian warrior stood. His expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his voice held a tone they hadn't heard before. Respect. "I was wrong," said simply. "I called humanity a viral species. I said you were too violent, too unpredictable to join the galactic community. I advocated for your quarantine. I thought I was protecting the galaxy." He paused, looking directly at the human delegation. "But in truth, I was protecting our comfort, our predictability. We have become so advanced, so civilized, that we forgot what it means to truly fight for survival. The Devourers nearly destroyed us because we had become too refined to fight dirty. You saved us by remembering what we forgot." Another delegate stood, a being of floating energy similar to. "The Devourers have been our nightmare for centuries. 17 civilizations destroyed, thousands of worlds burned. We tried everything to stop them, but they adapted to everything we tried." "Then humanity arrived," another voice added. "With weapons we discarded 10,000 years ago, with tactics we would call primitive. with a level of chaos that our military academies would fail students for employing. Doctor stepped forward, "If I may speak." Gestured assent. "We didn't win because we're better warriors than you," said. "We won because we're different. You've had peace for thousands of years. You've had time to refine your warfare into an art form, a science. Every species here has advanced together, creating sophisticated tactics and countertactics." She activated a holographic display showing the battle. But humanity never had that luxury. Every war we fought was against a different enemy using different tactics. We had to adapt constantly, to improvise, to try crazy things because we had no other choice. We never developed one perfect way to fight because there is no perfect way. There's only what works right now in this moment against this enemy. Shin added, "The Devourers evolved to counter predictability. They had databases of every advanced weapon in the galaxy, but they had no data on primitive weapons because no one uses them anymore. Our weakness became our strength." "More than that," Pilot spoke up. "You fight with AI systems and perfect calculations, but we fight with gut instinct and improvisation. When I was flying in that battle, I wasn't following any plan. I was making it up as I went along, reacting to what I saw. You can't predict that because I didn't even know what I'd do next." War Master nodded slowly. "You weaponized chaos itself." "We weaponized humanity," Admiral corrected. "Our creativity, our unpredictability, our stubbornness. For thousands of years, we've been told that advancement means leaving behind the primitive, the chaotic, the unpredictable. But sometimes, those are exactly the tools you need." High Arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber. "The Council must vote on a matter of great importance. Humanity has violated the quarantine order. This cannot be ignored. We must decide on appropriate consequences." The humans tensed. After everything they'd done, would they still face punishment? "However," continued, "there is also the matter of humanity's actions at Threshold Station and in the defense of Earth. Actions that saved 12,000 Council citizens and potentially prevented the Devourers from gaining access to Council technology and star charts." A new delegate stood, one they hadn't seen before. It was Governor from Threshold Station. "I wish to speak on behalf of the 12,000 people humanity saved. We were abandoned by the Council. Our own government couldn't reach us in time. But these humans, these quarantined primitives, came anyway. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They saved us because it was the right thing to do." Another stood. "I am Commander. I led the Council fleet that arrived during the final battle. I witnessed human tactics firsthand. They were chaotic, inefficient, and utterly brilliant. Our own ships learned from watching them. We incorporated their unpredictability into our own strategies. Without that, we might not have prevailed." More voices joined in. Species that had lost worlds to the Devourers, generals who had studied the battle recordings, scientists who wanted to understand the human doctrine of warfare. Finally, High Arbiter called for order. "The Council will now vote on 3 measures. First, shall humanity be punished for violating the quarantine?" The vote was swift, 47 votes of no. Not a single species voted to punish Earth. "Second, shall the quarantine be lifted immediately?" 47 votes of yes. "Third, shall humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereof?" The vote was unanimous, yes. The chamber erupted in sounds and displays of celebration. Admiral felt tears on his cheeks. Beside him was openly weeping, just grinned like a fool. A young human stepped forward. Ambassador 1, newly appointed as Earth's official representative to the Council. He was 25 years old, chosen specifically because he represented the generation that would inherit this new galactic future. "On behalf of humanity," began, his voice steady, "we accept membership in the Galactic Council. We come not as conquerors or saviors, but as partners. We have much to learn from you. Your technology, your wisdom, your thousands of years of peace." He paused, looking around the chamber. "But we also have things to teach. Not about weapons or warfare, though we can help with that too. We can teach you about adapting to the unexpected, about finding solutions in chaos, about never giving up even when logic says you should." "You expected us to be a threat," continued. "You never expected us to be your salvation. Honestly, we didn't expect it either. But that's humanity. We thrive on not knowing what comes next. We excel at making it up as we go along." War Master approached the human delegation. "There is one more matter. Several species have requested that Earth establish a military academy. We wish to learn your human doctrine. Will you teach us?" Admiral looked at his team, still recovering but standing tall. The scientist who bridged worlds, the strategist who made chaos tactical, Sung who turned junk into weapons, who flew by instinct. "We'll teach you," said. "But understand, the human doctrine isn't about copying what we did. It's about finding your own chaos, your own creativity. It's about remembering that advancement doesn't mean losing the ability to adapt and improvise." 5 years later, Captain Shin commanded a joint task force hunting down the last Devourer remnants in deep space. His crew was mixed: humans, helix warriors, crystalline beings, and dozens of other species. They had all learned to fight with controlled chaos, to trust their instincts alongside their instruments. Dr. ran the Council's Academy for Strategic Innovation on Earth. Students from across the galaxy came to learn not just about warfare, but about human problem-solving, how to think creatively under pressure, how to find unconventional solutions, how to embrace the unpredictable. Admiral Park had retired to a small house in Korea, spending time with his. But today, he was giving a speech to the class of officers at Earth's Naval Academy. "The galaxy thought they knew war," he told the young cadets, human and alien alike. "They had refined it to a science over thousands of years. They had perfect tactics, perfect weapons, perfect strategies." He smiled, remembering the chaos of the Battle of Saul. They never expected that a species who could barely reach the stars would be the ones to teach them how to fight. They never expected that being primitive would be an advantage. They never expected that chaos could defeat perfect order. He looked at the diverse faces before him, representing dozens of worlds united in common purpose. But most of all, they never expected that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't our guns or our ships or our tactics. It was our refusal to accept defeat, our stubborn belief that there's always another way, another solution, another chance. Outside, ships were launching, joint patrols mixing human unpredictability with alien precision. The galaxy had changed. War had changed. And at the center of it all was a small blue world whose people had been rejected, dismissed, and underestimated. Until they weren't. Historian sat in her office at the Galactic Archives, reviewing her completed work. The comprehensive history of humanity's integration into galactic society. Her conclusion had been debated by scholars across the stars, but she stood by it. She read it one more time before submitting the final draft. The galaxy learned a crucial lesson from humanity. Advancement is not about leaving chaos behind. It's about channeling chaos into creativity. Sometimes, the species who seem most out of place are exactly what the universe needs. The question is never whether chaos will come, but whether you're brave enough to embrace it when it does. She smiled and hit submit. Future generations would read about the day humanity saved the galaxy, and they would understand that sometimes being unexpected is the greatest strength of all.